And get started, call to order, and begin with Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Schaff, please, can you help us with that? Thank you, Mr. Schaff. Joan, will you please do a roll call for us, please?
Charles Long, Chris Martinson,
Here.
Michael Shaw,
Here.
Priscilla Manuelito, Kevin Mitchell.
Here. All right, we have a quorum, so we'll go ahead and get started. The first item on the agenda is number 2, approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mortensen, I would like to make a motion that we approve the agenda.
Okay.
Second.
Motion's been made. Second. Mr. Mitchell, roll call, please, Joan.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen.
Yes. All right, next item.
I would like to make a motion that we move into executive session because a lot of this has to do with what will be discussed in executive session.
Okay, motion's been made. Second
Second.
by Mr. Mitchell. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen.
Yes.
105.
All right, 105. We'll go ahead and move to executive session real quick. All right, everybody, welcome back. Do we have a motion to return to regular session?
So moved.
Okay, Joan, roll call, please.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw, Mr. Mortensen.
Yes.
2:36.
Okay, the report on the closed executive session, there was no action taken. The things discussed are outlined in item 5A. I won't read through that. I'll allow you to read through it on your own. Those are the things that we talked about, and there was no actions taken. So let's go ahead and move on. We skipped down to executive session. We're going to run back up to the consent agenda.
Do we need to vote come out of
We
action?
did.
Oh,
We did,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
They did.
We'll jump back up to item 3, approval of the consent agenda items. What is the pleasure of the board?
I would like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda items 3A, 3B, 3C, 3D, 3E.
Okay. We
I'll
have
second.
a motion and a second. Roll call, please, Joan?
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen.
Yes. Okay, the next item is item 4, new business. We'll start with 4A, approval of the GMCS reentry plan with adjustments for school year 2021. Discussion and action. I guess we'll turn some time over to Mr. Hyatt for discussion items on that, and then I don't know, maybe we'll hold questions until the very end of this specific item 4A, and we'll go like that. Mr. Hyatt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm going to give you a little bit of information on some of the additions that we're asking for the reentry plan. Things are changing, unfortunately changing too much with respect to the public education department. Saying one thing can happen and then days later, or sometimes even faster than that, saying that, oh, we made a mistake, those are not allowed. These kinds of changes this late in the game, after it took so long for their alleged directives that came out in June, and the continual changes that have happened, have really created a lot of burden on school districts across the state. Even this week, as you know, there are school districts that have students in the classroom, yet even during this week, the Secretary of Education, or this past week, the Secretary of Education was making changes. One of the significant changes that was made prior to last week was the Public Education Department realized how devastating it is to students who are at risk to not at least have the opportunity, if they choose, to go to in-person instruction. And I want to clarify what at-risk students are defined as from the Public Education Department. These are students who are economically disadvantaged, English language learners, students who are mobile as far as they move from their home, and also students who have disability and students who are Native American. As you know, our district students qualify in many of those areas as far as at risk. And those students, especially if you think about, for example, the economically disadvantaged, there are many students in our district who do not have access to the internet, who can't get access to the internet at home. In the direction from the Secretary of Education, that was going to be allowed. Students who did not have access to the internet could come to school if they chose. And in addition, there was allowance for students who do not learn well online can come to school, which is a large majority of students also across the state. And again, as I've mentioned before, even adults have a difficult time sometimes learning online. It works for certain populations of students and adults, but not everybody. As a result, the opportunity to have a good learning environment for your child is diminished if the state would not allow that. So we were excited. The ratio that the state was going to allow to bring students back into the school buildings was a 5-to-1 ratio. So you could have 5 students in a classroom per 1 teacher. In a classroom to be very easily to socially distance and to stay safe in that environment. And so we were planning to do that. During negotiations, it appeared that the union notified the state that we were planning on bringing those students back in to give them that opportunity because, again, don't have internet need this consistency, need this opportunity if they so choose, or the parents so choose. And within a day or so, the Secretary of Education said it was a mistake. They didn't have authority to do that, and they pulled it all back. At that time, that became a difficult situation, because now these students, if they wanted to, or if their parents wanted to, they could have had their child come back to school face-to-face, at least for part of the week, with a one-to-one instruction from their teacher. Again, this took away parents' choice. Give it to them, take it away a week before school starts. In some cases, in some districts, school had already started. This plays directly to our Yazzie Martinez lawsuit that we won, and continually to win with it, with respect to forcing the state to try to provide a sufficient education for students. In my opinion, this goes directly against the court order to make sure that you're providing that. Now saying that students can't come back to a 5-to-1 ratio, they're at risk. It seems as though the state is trying to force districts, but I would say the state has the liability that they're not providing FAPE, which is free, appropriate public education to students. And so under duress, we are forced now to not allow at-risk students to come to school if they so choose. Again, as the Gallup McKinley County Schools, we have chosen, you as a board have chosen to give parents choice. If they want to bring their child back to school, they can. If they don't and want to stay home, then we'll do our best to provide a virtual environment for them to learn in. As the state continues to go down this road, it seems that they're taking more parent choice away from parents, and that's very unfortunate. So at this time, we are in a situation where the state now says, all of a sudden, that you can allow a 5-to-1 teacher ratio still only for pre-K through 3rd grade students and students with a disability. So what we are asking from the board is to allow the school district to maximize the number of students at a 5-to-1 ratio in pre-K through 3rd grade, and also for all students that have a disability, that they have the choice to come back to school if they so choose, and we will have a schedule for them so they can attend class in person when they choose, so they can get that face-to-face instruction that they need and have the right to. We also are asking a change in our plan. The court order that happened with the temporary restraining order from Judge Peterson only specifically talks about teachers, and we may need to talk a little bit more about safety and staff at GMCS, or any district, I guess, for that matter. But if teachers are going to have a choice to stay home and provide instruction, if they don't have students in their classroom, as you know, we have a 14% special education population of students with disability. K through 3 is about, pre-K through 3, we're probably close to between about 3,500 students in our district that would have the opportunity, if they so chose, to come back to school. But if there is an opportunity and a teacher is able to teach from home because they don't have students in their classes, then there needs to be accountability for those teachers who are teaching from home. And I want to preface this with a vast majority of teachers, even though there's concerns from lots of people, a vast majority of our teachers, from what I'm hearing, want to have opportunity to teach their students in the best way possible. Many are already coming back by their choice into classrooms to get them ready. Even the union negotiated that this Friday was a day for teachers to actually come back and prepare their classrooms for students that could arrive as early as next Monday. Yet goes to court to try to stop teachers from being from following their own negotiated item of preparing their classrooms. So whether they pay somebody to come in or whatever, or if they choose to come in, I guess that's what's going to have to be for now. The third item is, well, with respect to that particular item, we want to make sure that there is good access at home, and these next two items, there's good access at home for those teachers that are teaching from home, and also that it's monitored to make sure the public dollars, the taxpayer dollars, are going to good use, and that people are at home outside of the physical supervision of a supervisor are monitored, and their activity on our laptops that are provided to them that teaching will take place from, or all of the teaching will take place from, that it would be monitored regularly and consistently to ensure that connectivity to the internet is kept, and also that work is being performed with taxpayer dollars. And I want to give you an example. We were in a hearing the other day, and a person was not in Gallup, lives in the middle of Gallup, and was attending a Zoom conference for this particular hearing, and had to stay connected. In Gallup, with the internet connection that they had, they could not stay on the hearing. Now I want you to think about a classroom of students online, virtually working with a teacher, and the teacher's Zoom or their Teams or whatever mode they're using to teach those students drops. How much damage is that to the learning of students? Whereas in person, it's very difficult for that to drop because it's in person, right? But online, to have that happen would be devastating to that classroom. It would also be devastating if a student can connect, but to have the teacher drop and lose the entire class, it can be very frustrating. Over the last few calls we've had with the Secretary of Education, who was in Philadelphia, he could not stay connected to the Zoom conference with the superintendents. Yet here in our community in McKinley County, how much more difficult is that going to be to provide a good standard, a good internet connection? Even myself here in Gallup, I have a wired connected internet access that goes in and out. I cannot keep a signal. So we've got to set some level of standards so that if teachers do choose to stay home, that we can guarantee and monitor the connectivity and that work is being performed for students. The last thing is that I know that it's very valuable for our board to make sure that this issue is addressed. And I think as an administration, we thought it would be valuable for you to consider giving parents whose child's teacher is working from home, that they also provide a level of accountability. And if they see that connectivity is being lost for their child, that they can fill out a report to let us know if we're unable to monitor that or we're at that time. We are one of the important things that I've tried to stress. We weren't able to pull it off. We'll continue to try to work towards that. But having our staff teach from our schools, the connectivity is maybe the best in our county for most schools, if not all but one in Sagai. That gives the best possible outcome of an internet connection not being lost if they're teaching from the school. One person in a classroom, safe, with social distancing and other PPE that's provided or brought to make sure that people are safe. And that just seems to be, by some entities and others, that would be unsafe. It's unfortunate, members of the board, that we're at this point where certain small groups of individuals who have adult needs, or adult wants, I'll call them, at the expense of student needs. And so what we're going to try to do under the court order, which seems to be pretty radical, given that the PED Secretary's authority is severely in question here about what he can dictate, especially when school already started, let alone before. So we'll continue to look at that, and you'll have some action items that you can address that later. But I present this plan to you, or this additional addendum to the plan, for your consideration so that we can monitor and provide the best that we can online services to students, and to bring as many students, if parents choose, to bring their students back to school and have a teacher and instructor physically there to teach their child. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Members of the board, do you have any questions for Mr. Hyatt about any of the things we've talked about here, this reentry plan?
Thank you, Mr. Mortensen. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I have a couple of questions and a couple of comments. One of the things that I really want to stress is for our parents, grandparents, guardians that are out there, that as a board member, it's so confusing to come to almost every meeting that we have and something else has changed. And we're sitting here trying to update, trying to comprehend the new changes that PED is making. First of all, it's confusing. And it's confusing to us as board members, and then I just can't even imagine how our parents are feeling at this point. You can, you can't, you should, you shouldn't. And their PED is really confusing and making us, because it won't be, no one's going to say this is PED's doing it. Everybody's going to say it's Gallup McKinley County, it's Superintendent Hyatt, it's the board. I mean, they can go on and blame and point the finger, but this is not a decision that we wanted for our parents or for our students. And it's getting them very confused. And the next point I have, Mr. Hyatt, is were PED elected by their constituents to have the authority to make change these board policies and policies for our staff? No. We were the ones that were elected. We were the ones that said we would oversee the educational benefits of our children in our counties and districts. And it's upsetting that we are getting these directives or these changes, and to us as board members and as a school district, but that's our responsibility. That is what we took an oath for, but yet there's other entities that are making these policy changes without even consulting or having tribal consultation or having our PAC parents involved in these discussions at all. And I think that's what's upsetting to me is there's no one that is listening to our parents. There's no one that's listening to our children. I've gotten several phone calls and comments and even a meeting, conference meeting last week, that parents were very nervous, I guess, about the reentry, and they wanted more information. They wanted to be given the choice. If it was their choice to either do virtual learning, they did have concerns about technology. How are we going to get the kids technology? And after our previous meeting, I had that information and passed it along, that the district will be giving out technology to them. But then, yes, we can give them a Wi-Fi. Yes, we can give them a laptop. But if they do not have the signal in a lot of our remote areas, how is that going to benefit them? So some of them have said, as the precautions, can you please tell me what precautions you guys are taking? I told them, the ones that I jotted my notes on, and said, it's up to you. If you feel that you want to have your child, especially the younger ones, going to school, that is up to you. And at this point, we have taken that choice away. And hearing, we all know the at-risk definition. That's us. That's my grandchild. That is our grandchildren. That is my nieces and my nephews out there. We're the at-risk. And for them to not to understand or even come to our district to see how remote it is very upsetting. The secretary, we heard all that stuff on the news that he's in Philadelphia. When is he here to actually go through our schools, go to our students and see the lifestyle that they're living? We're not that fortunate that we can fly back and forth to Philadelphia all the time and have the accesses that he has. And this upsets me just because I know where my children are from in this district, and them not having that limitation to where it says, okay, we're doing this K through third now with a 5-to-1 ratio, but only for special ed children, not at risk anymore. They took at risk off. So now we can't even serve our children that are wanting to come to school. The parents want them to go to school. have a one-on-one or have their teacher with them, we're now taking that away from them because they don't have internet. They don't have Wi-Fi or signal out there to serve these children. So I think one of the things that we need to continue to do is advocate strongly on behalf of them and continue to see, and Mr. Hyatt and our team here, continue please to put the information out there to our parents and let them know that this is not a mandate from us, that this is something that PED is once again forgetting about our at-risk children. And we need to continue to put that wherever we can to let our parents know and our staff know, because if we continue this route, we're going to be losing our staff. We're going to be losing those job opportunities that support our children because we have a lot of staff that have children that go to school that are also students. We're affecting a lot of our own families in this. So that's what I would like is, Mr. Hyatt, please continue to put out the information and not let the negativity continue to defy what we're doing here, and that's trying to support our children. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Manuelito. Are there any other questions or comments on this one?
Yeah, Mr. President. First of all, I just would like to say that, I'm really disturbed by PED taking away our local empowerment to ensure that, we as a board, working alongside our superintendent and administration, to be overriding us in decisions that we have made, and preparing since this started, all the work that we have been doing, putting in, the administration has put in as far as ensuring that we are going to work as hard as we can to make sure that our students are safe. So, at this time, one of my questions is, have we had staff in our buildings, since this has happened? I know that we've had a couple principals, but any other staff in our buildings working?
Mr. Mitchell, we have had at least some staff from the beginning working. There's just things that need to be taken care of in the district. And the governor claimed all employees were essential workers. And so we have been doing our best to try to keep people home, at least at the beginning of the pandemic, and have brought more and more back as we learn more about the virus and also more about the ways in which we can protect ourselves and others within our facilities. And what's interesting is there seems to be a lot of conversation about a select few teachers, where, going back to the classroom, we have had bus drivers, custodians, maintenance workers, food service preparers working all this time taking care of students' needs. Without them, buildings wouldn't be prepared. Food, at times we were delivering 15,000 meals a day. And I haven't heard any union in the state of Mexico talk about those individuals or advocate for them very strongly. It's all about a certain group, a smaller population of certain group of teachers. And maybe that's why it's in some of their names of the unions and not the other employees that are represented. So yes, there have been people here from the beginning, and there's more now because we're trying to get schools prepared, and it becomes very difficult to try to even let staff know, let alone parents, as the state continues to flip-flop on their decisions. It appears to be from outside forces forcing them to do so for whatever, whether it's political reasons or financial reasons, who knows. So the schools are safe. The governor's declared them safe or people wouldn't be in the school building. She wouldn't allow it. But it seems that we're trying to protect a certain group of people, even though, let's think about a bus driver. They could have 40 students on their bus next week or the week after. Has anybody said that that's unsafe? But if we're going to bring 5 students back into a classroom with a teacher in maybe 800 square feet, that is unsafe? That makes absolutely no sense. And it appears in our government there's a lot of things that don't make sense. There's the consistency, there's no consistency, it doesn't seem reasonable. People conduct their lives and the needs that they have for their families every single day. Just today, at one point we had 14, 15 people in the room. Some people left. Some of those people are advocating not to go to work, yet they were able to come here. You see them in Walmart. You see them getting gas. Thank goodness for those people that are willing to go to work to provide the services for our community. It'd be interesting if people in our community, whether they're public servants or whether it's just citizens in general, if they went to the hospital and the nurses didn't show up or the doctor didn't show up and they needed services from those people. Virtually, it doesn't always work. For a vast majority of the needs, it doesn't work. Our students aren't much different. They need that in-person instruction as much as possible in a safe environment. And they're being denied that opportunity. And it's not by the school district. It's by outside forces and our own government at times that's doing it to them. And creating a liability that is huge. And who's going to take care of that liability? So this is a big issue. And I think it becomes very clear when you look at it and look at all the different employees that we have and all the different services being provided in our community, and they're being done in a safe way. The spread and the number of new cases in McKinley County has dropped more than any other county in the state because we've been doing a good job as far as keeping people safe and keeping ourselves safe. Are there still a few cases that are happening every day? Yes, but it's much less than the 100 or more that were happening 2-3 months ago. And we don't want to go back there. And it appears that we're doing the right things here, yet some people can't come and serve kids. It's time we get past what adults want and really focus on what kids need, especially all kids. But for heaven's sake, at-risk kids that don't have an internet, can't come to school? That makes absolutely no sense.
Mr. Hyatt, we just have, it's still out there. The Yazzie Martinez lawsuit's still out there, fighting for our at-risk children. Aren't they even, doesn't that lawsuit come back to their minds and think, this is affecting that again? They are doing the same injustice with the Yazzie Martinez lawsuit for at-risk students again. And they don't see the effects of how this is going to harm them. And I think that's why, we have that lawsuit, because it showed PED what they were doing wrong. And that the injustice, the inequality that was happening for our students, which is, 85%? Or I don't know what's our at-risk?
At-risk is 94%, at least. That's just the economically disadvantaged section. There's 80% Native American, about 25-26% mobile population, and also the students with disability is 14%, and I mentioned Native American. So I think those are ELL is 30%.
With it being the Board of Education, we're the ones that get sued. So if a family sues us for not providing that education to them, the PED needs to be a part of that lawsuit. They need to get that sued because they're preventing us from providing educational services to our at-risk students. They need to be the ones to get sued, not us. PED needs to get sued.
Well, it appears judges are making that decision also. So it's interesting. I don't know where the liability lies in that.
Mm-hmm. Superintendent, since it's very clear that PED has taken our parent choice and not only that, our students' choice as far as attending school, do we have a number on our students that will not have access from their homes to be taught virtually?
It's probably around 6,000 students that would not have the availability to choose to come back in person, at least part-time.
So if these students that have zero access to internet, are we going to allow them to come into school saying, I want to be educated, I need to come to school, and this is the only way I'm gonna be able to do it.
Not currently. Judge Peterson said no, and I'm assuming that if we tried to, we'd be back in court trying to take parents' choice away.
Okay, because, well, I think we're gonna be back in court anyway, because to me, I think what we're doing is we're, not allowing our children, the 94% at-risk children that we have in our district, quality education by doing this.
You're right. We can't. Virtual learning will never be a replacement for in-person. Even on the AFT website nationally, it says the same thing. So you can't have it both ways.
And I really hope that, this person that was going in and out of the Zoom conference when you guys had your meeting is not a teacher, because if that is the case, this teacher or this person would not be able to teach our children efficiently. And I do see, and when I did walk in this room, I saw union members here who are so worried about coming into a classroom but yet can sit here. I mean, I don't really see the difference. They would be in an empty classroom. Okay, and okay, one more thing. Honestly, can you state, are our teachers ready to teach virtually? I mean, we were supposed to be providing training Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of this week. It didn't happen. Some of the teachers that are reaching out to me are freaking out because they don't have no idea of how to teach virtually. They're not going to get that training. So, honestly, how many of our teachers and what is our students, are they even ready for virtual learning and teaching?
Some are. Some have been trained already to some extent. There was a need for this training to take place so that we could have the tech support, make sure computers are running, have admin and others to help assist to make sure that teachers were able to learn this new software and be able to navigate it so they can prepare for their classes, whether virtual or in person or however they chose to use it. And so now we're under the gun. They're under the gun. They've been put in a bad position. It's unfortunate. We're going to do our best. It's going to be a bumpy road. People are going to have some patience as we move through this. It's going to take some time to get up to speed. It was, even with the training, it was going to take time to get used to the software and for students to get used to it. Just think about this. How do you get a laptop to a student that doesn't come to school and then train them on how to use that software at home? That's a complication. Nobody ever talks about that. All we do is talk about adults at times. Look at the students that are affected by this. Had they been able to come to school by choice and get the training, if they weren't able to figure it out on their own or with videos or other online opportunities, how are they going to get the opportunity to get one-to-one help with that? So I think people, they look at these hot topics or these hot items, and if you look at it in perspective across the spectrum, there's a lot of issues that have to take place, and one thing could drastically affect the other. And if we start getting back to looking at what students need instead of what adults want, we'll at least get there sooner than later. But the longer this drags out, where people are trying to protect a few at the expense of the whole, it's going to take longer, and education is going to suffer for our kids.
Thank you.
Mr. Hyatt, on one more question. With what a lot of my family's worried about is, our students are already have had struggles, and we're not at the level that they're supposed to be educational wise. And we ended the year last year early, and now we're having issues at the beginning of the year. This is going to affect that again. This is going to affect their education to where it's going to be hard to catch them back up again.
Yes, Ms. Manlio, again, I'll refer to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. It says the importance of reopening America's schools this fall. If you get a chance, look through this document. You can find it on the CDC website. It explains not only academically, but also socially, emotionally, and physically the harm of not at least having some in-person opportunities in schools, how damaging it is to kids. academically, students already drop, as I spoke last meeting, they drop in what they've retained from the year prior. Now, the older they get, the more they lose over the summer, for example. Given that students may be in a virtual or will have to be forced to be in a virtual environment or won't be able to participate in that virtual environment, it's going to significantly increase the learning loss. And then to try to catch students up who may come to us below grade level, it takes time to do that in a regular traditional environment. And we've had some success. The graph right behind your head talks about how much we've grown in reading. We're almost catching up and surpassing the state with reading proficiency. Yet something like this, especially when you're essentially attacking at-risk students who we found a way to be successful, we're going to lose ground, unfortunately. It's just inevitably going to happen. And that's unfortunate. Again, those are the students that lose. And our community. They're our future adults. Those are future leaders of our own community.
Well, I think one of the things that individuals need to know is that we live that life. You know, I lived an at-risk life. We know what our communities are like, and individuals don't. They have the privilege of beautiful houses, running water, electricity. They don't have to haul wood. I bet you they've never hauled wood in their life or hauled water. We have to do that. And going home for some of our students is the basic needs have to be met first, not homework. Their basic needs of trying to get a wood fire, getting to cook the food for dinner. And I think that's what a lot of individuals do not continue to understand, that they say, oh, virtual learning will solve everything. Yeah, in the city, not in our rural homes, not to where our children need I'm a hands-on learner. That's the way I've learned. A majority of our students are Native American, learn with our hands. That's how our grandfathers, our grandmothers taught us. They didn't tell us, look at this video, how to make tortillas. It was a hands-on experience that we needed to learn how to do it in one-on-one with our sisters, with our cousins, to learn how to make tortillas. And I think that's what a lot of individuals do not understand, and they think that you read a book, you'll learn it. Look on the internet, you'll understand it. But that doesn't work for 94% of our children.
Thank you, Ms. Manuelito. If there are no other questions, I'll entertain a motion
I would like
on
to make a
item 4A.
motion of approval of the Gallup McKinley County School re-entry plan with adjustments for school year 2020-21.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, great. We have a motion and a second. Joan, please roll call.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen.
Yes. All right, the next item on our agenda is 4B, approval of filing of prohibited practices complaint against McFuse if needed. Are there any questions about this
I motion.
item? Motion to approve, a second?
Second.
Second. Also, Joan, roll call, please.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen.
Yes. All right, item 4C, approval of filing counterclaim against McFuse in state litigation if needed.
Mr. Mortensen, I would like to table this until future board meeting.
We'll leave it open until sometime in the future. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second. Roll call, please, Joan.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen.
Yes. All right, the last item in our new business is number 4D, approval on filing legal action against the PED if needed. Are there any questions about this item?
I would like to make a motion, the approval on filing legal action against the PED if needed.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mitchell. Joan, can you roll call, please?
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Miss Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen.
Yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's business. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All right, roll call, please, Joan.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Miss Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen.
Yes.
3:17.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We're adjourned.
Thank you.